Indy, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
We are very eager to hear your story, your transformation, and everything else that went along with it. Before we get into that, do you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and our listeners?
Yes, my dog Bear. So I just got him about 3 weeks ago, a day before I moved to a new city. So it has been amazing having him with me, and we're both kind of settling into North Carolina together. So it's been great.
Is he a big dog? Like, does he look like a bear?
Yeah, he's like a big pit bull. So he has like this big blocky head and big muscles and but our family always jokes that we're all bears, so he's part of the family now. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Do you find that people react to him because he's a pit bull in more like of a scared way than they would other dogs?
Yeah, it's one way or the other. Either people are really excited and really want to see him, or people look really scared of him. And I find myself saying all the time, like, don't worry, he's friendly. He's good,
Right.
But a lot of people are just scared of the breed in general.
Yeah, the breed's gotten a bad rap, and I don't know if it's really justified.
No, they are powerful animals. So it's important that, they're treated well. If they're not treated well, you can have a problem. For sure.
For sure. So yeah, they are powerful animals and they're known as fighters. And
Mm-hmm.
you're now I'm going to call it more like a peaceful fighter. I know that martial arts has become a really big part of your life, and like the grappling and all of that that releases so much energy and is so healing. And I want to talk about that soon. So why don't you tell
Awesome.
us where you were, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and how your life has changed since you found plant-based?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. I would have been in my mid-20s around then, and a lot was going on. My health was just not in a good place. So I had fibromyalgia and was in chronic pain all the time. So just everything hurt constantly. And I was also about 80 pounds heavier than I am right now. So I was carrying a lot more weight, and with all the joint pain and everything, that was very difficult. And probably the most challenging thing was, I was having a really hard time with mental health issues. And I was kind of hitting rock bottom around that time in my mid-20s, actually. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in my early 20s, but I had been struggling with it since I was 11 years old. So, I've had, it's basically like polar extremes. So there's the depression side of things, and then there's the mania side of things. So most people are familiar with depression, just kind of really low mood, low energy, and for me, it got very, very low. And then the mania is kind of on the other side, where it's so much energy and not sleeping, and very erratic behavior. And eventually it did lead into psychosis. So, and I did have basically a break in my mid-20s as well, following some major life events. So, but that was a catalyst to change everything. So it ended up working out really nicely. Like, it felt like the end of the world at the time, but it ended up, having me change my diet and really start taking care of myself in a holistic sense. So not just my diet, but also drinking enough water and trying to get enough sleep, and getting, I guess, negative people out of my life too. And and so then let's see, it was almost 5 years ago, I stumbled across a vegan diet. I was watching YouTube videos, and I came across a video about the egg industry, and it really like took me by surprise. I had no idea what all was going on there. And then I started watching videos on dairy and so on, and I ended up, I was already kind of playing around with plant-based sort of stuff before then, but that's when I made an ethical connection, and from there on, I haven't looked back. So, yeah, but at first I tried like a raw vegan diet for health issues, and it really helped. And then I kind of bounced back and forth for a while between like, I did raw vegan and then pescatarian and vegetarian and so on. But when I finally made the ethical connection, it was just vegan from there on out. And I really try to keep it as, really high in fruit and veggies and all of that, mostly whole foods, but I'm not perfect in that regard.
A plant-based burger always sneaks in here and there, right? Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I want to go back and if you don't mind, can I ask a couple of questions about the bipolar?
Sure.
So when you talk about, depression and really low and hitting rock bottom, is it, not getting up in the morning, not going to school, not getting a job or not showing up to work, suicidal thoughts? Like, is it all of those things that were kind of going on?
Yeah, so it's different for everybody. For me, it would be all of those things. So I had my first suicidal type depression when I was 11. So it started really early for me. Yeah, so when I did drop into those lows, they could last months, or at times they would last years. So one of them lasted like maybe 2.5 years, and I did reach psychosis in that depression as well, which is basically just hallucinations, like extreme. In my case, it was just it was very intense. But yeah, I lost several jobs throughout the years when I was younger because it wasn't under control, even though I was on medication on top of medication. And, at times I would have 5 or 6 different psych meds with them trying to balance me out. But in my experience, it was only making things worse because I would get all these crazy side effects and not see any benefit. And I know it's different for everybody, but in my case, that's kind of how it was going.
So being 11 years old, how did you communicate that to your parents? Or what would you recommend for a young listener or parents of somebody who's worried about their child, what to look for, what to say? What's the connection there?
So I don't know that I talked too much about my parents when I was about that when I was really young. It was probably more like 14 or so when I really started talking to them. I would recommend talking to your parents, though. It would probably have been better if I had. And I think from the child side, I think finding someone who you feel really comfortable with and who has always been supportive, that's really important. And then just being honest with what's going on. From the parent side, it can be really jarring to hear that. Even as like a friend, if a friend, tells you that, it can be really kind of alarming. But I think the most helpful thing in that situation is to try to just be there for them and listen more than anything, and then seek out additional professional help, especially if there's suicidal thoughts. Like, it's really important to see a counselor or, kind of talk to somebody.
At what point did you feel like you needed the help or wanted the help and was accepting of finding support that you needed?
So I was in my early 20s when I was diagnosed, and a guy that I dated like a long time ago, he had dealt with depression issues, and I talked to him about what I was going through, and he recommended me go and see a therapist, and I did, and I saw therapists for many years, and psychiatrists are basically, the doctors who can prescribe the medication. So like I did a combination there, but yeah, I was in my early 20s. I didn't even know what exactly was going on with me. Like I just felt so out of control. And I was,
I know during my times of depression, there was a fine line between me just thinking I was sad or just thinking I was going through a hard time and actually realizing that it was keeping me from living my life, or it was more of an issue that I thought it was, or I actually really did need help. So I guess at 11 years old, you wouldn't actually say like, this might be depression, or, hey, I might need help.
Right.
And there needs to be that, like, sometimes there's an experience or a thought or something scares you into saying, okay, this is more than just what other people go through. I actually need to do something about it now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people probably do experience some level of depression at some time in their life, and that can be for any number of reasons, whether it be like life happens or chemically, or whatever is going on. But yeah, I would say a good indicator that it's something more serious is if like you literally feel incapable of functioning, that's a big problem. If you can't get out of bed and take a shower and go to work and eat, or you're eating all the time and can't stop, or, that's kind of when I recognize like, okay, this is a problem. I need to nowadays talk to my mentor or, adjust something that needs to be adjusted.
So something that I haven't experienced is the manic, right? I've been in the depressive mode. I've been in Shoshana mode, but I've never been in the manic mode. When you first go into manic mode, do you think, oh, okay, I'm healed. Everything's okay. I don't actually have a problem. And when do you realize that the manic is actually manic? It's not just happiness or indie or what have you.
Right. So I actually really struggled with that for years because if I would get, really happy, really excited, I'd be like, oh no, is this mania, and I don't think that was actually good for me. But mania, even nowadays, like I'll go into hypomanias, which is basically like mania light. So it's kind of like not sleeping as much, really happy and excited and a million ideas going, and a very productive time, to be honest. And in my case, it feels amazing. It's basically the opposite of what depression feels like. I haven't gone into like a major manic episode like I used to in quite a while. But yeah, I can be in a hypomanic state for weeks and not know it. So I actually have good friends and family who can point things out to me because they know, that might be, that might be mania a little bit, if I'm talking really fast or if I seem to be having a million ideas and a little bit scattered, then they can kind of point it out for me. But if I catch it on my own, normally I can look back and be like, oh, okay, this has been going on for weeks. So it's really tricky. It's not something that's like easily detectable. And then by the time it is, like, it's either you have to be careful because it can go up into like a full-blown manic episode, which would include like really dangerous kind of behaviors and oh,
hi, Bear.
Sorry. And eventually psychosis. But again, I haven't had it get to that level on either side, either the depression or the mania. Actually, since I went vegan, it's been tremendously better. So it's okay, Beth.
That's really great to hear. And I know that you said that you went through different types of eating. So you did the raw vegan, you did, or, raw plant-based, or you did, you added in eggs or you added in fish or what have you. So did you see a difference of going from a vegan side to a not vegan side? And how are you managing it now in terms of your overall diet?
And I apologize. I think someone may have knocked or something. So he's kind of...
No problem.
Yeah. So, when I was kind of bouncing back and forth, I could tell more on a physical level, like, okay, I feel terrible when I add dairy back in, specifically dairy. Actually, the whole fibromyalgia diagnosis, that was dairy for me. Once I got the dairy out, my pain went away. And then when I would put it back in, I would feel really rough. And it did affect my moods, actually, thinking back to it. So when I did have dairy, I would also have a really hard time around that time of the month, where I would have just way more issues with my hormones. Like I just would get very depressed before and during, and then I'd be okay for a little while, and then but it was every month, and now that doesn't happen anymore. And yeah, I would say the biggest difference would probably be with the dairy. But I just felt so much better physically and when I was eating vegan, and that makes a huge difference in how you feel mentally and emotionally, because if you feel like weighed down, it's a lot harder to kind of motivate yourself to keep pushing forward. So
yeah, the impact of dairy is really enormous, and we talked about that with Dr. Angie on episode 339 not too long ago, and it really impacts, dairy does, so much of the population, and so many people don't even realize how bad it is on their body, on their mind, on their mental, social, physical well-being. And they only realize it once they remove it.
Yes.
And when they're no longer taking in the dairy, they start to feel very different. And it's amazing that more people aren't doing it yet, but more and more are. And you're just another example of the impact that dairy has on the body. Other than the dairy, other than the physical differences that it made for you, did it do anything emotionally? Maybe not the dairy specifically, but the plant-based lifestyle. Has things changed for you emotionally because of that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. On so many levels. So like I said before, with the depression and the mania, if you kind of think of it as far as like highs and lows, my highs are, maybe I would say half as high as they used to be. And my lows are about half as low as they used to be. And I have a lot more time where I'm stable and I have no issues with any of that. And sometimes I'll even go like a year without having any major stuff going. So that's amazing. Before I went plant-based, I was constantly up and down. And then I also had mixed episodes where it was a combination of depression and mania. And that's when things would get really dangerous, because you have all this impulsivity and you have all this energy to act on your depressive thoughts, basically. So since I went vegan, I don't have these mixed episodes anymore. Like, just the intensity of everything has gotten so much better. But I will say also a big part of that, I think, has been learning to go inward instead of like stuffing everything down like I used to do. I really try to like let energy move. And I've worked closely with a mentor who is a meditation teacher, and she's also a non-dual therapist. She's incredible, and she has helped like unwind trauma, basically. So that has been huge as well. So it's basically like, because trauma can get trapped in the body and can cause emotional issues or disease or whatever. And by unwinding that has really helped me. I think too, it's kind of a combination of a lot of things,
So You mentioned trauma, and I know that we're missing a big part of your story. So there's the trauma of, being manic depressive or going into depression states and going into manic states. I don't want to label in any way, but at the same time, throughout that, you were addicted to drugs and alcohol as well. Is that right?
Yes. So I started drinking and doing drugs when I was 14. So I was really young. I don't recommend that to anybody. It was a terrible idea, but and for me, I do have like addictive tendencies, and I really fell into that. And it got to the point when I was in my early 20s where I was binge drinking every night to the point where I was blacking out every night. And I just remember one night I didn't make it home, because it was a holiday actually, and I hadn't made it home in time to buy alcohol. And that was I realized that night, like that was the first time that I hadn't drank in who knows how long, So it was at that level. And then I was also doing like drugs on top of that. And it was not good. It was not a good idea. And I ended up going to a recovery support group. And I worked on trying to get clean and sober. And I was kind of back and forth for a while. And then eventually I strung together 2 years of sobriety. And that was great. But unfortunately...
Was that before, sorry to interrupt, was that before becoming plant-based or after?
Yes, this was before. And then one of the guys from the support group, there was a situation where he asked me for a ride to a meeting, and when I went to go pick him up, basically I was assaulted. So that was like, and then I was basically shunned from the group too, which is very common after that kind of thing happens.
He went back to the group and blamed you, or how did that work?
Basically said that like I had made the whole thing up. So that, and then I think, but I was the second girl that he had done this to. So, but they still sided with him. So I don't know how many girls this ended up happening to with him, but hopefully I was the last one. I don't know, but after that, I lost this group as well that I had been going to for a long time, and in the process lost a lot of friends, people that I thought I was close to. So it was kind of like this deep unraveling, and that was the event that really was the thing that kind of changed everything, where I was like, if I don't change everything, I am not going to make it. Because like at that point I had severe PTSD. Like I couldn't go anywhere basically without having panic attacks. I would do my grocery shopping at 1 or 2 in the morning because nobody was there. I didn't have to worry about standing in line with people behind me, and so I was at a point of desperation, and I think that I'm grateful for that. It was terrible, but I am so grateful because now I'm here. So, yeah.
I can't imagine all the stress and trauma that you've gone through. It's amazing that you're where you're at now, and to make all those changes could not have been easy. I don't even know how to do that. And I'm so glad I don't have to go through anything like that, and wish nobody else would have to go through that either. And you've clearly changed your path, and you're in a much better place now. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about this new you, the new Indi, and how things are going, and what you have going for you that's keeping you in this positive light rather than going back to where you were.
Yeah. So basically, my life now is completely different than it was. Um, so I ended up getting into sports, and I started, well, I was hiking a lot when I first went vegan. And then I started trail running because I had heard about this crazy thing called trail running where they run out there. And I'm like, that sounds so cool, and I finally worked my way up to running, and that was amazing. And then I took a self-defense class with this guy that a friend of mine knew, and ended up falling in love with jujitsu. So it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and it's basically like grappling, so like ground fighting. So it's like chokes and arm locks and leg locks, and basically, yeah, it's the most fun thing on the planet, if you ask me. But I actually just got back from training not too long ago. And so that really helped me feel a lot more confident and comfortable in my body. Like I feel like if that same thing were to happen again, I would have a much better chance of being able to defend myself. And, so that helps me kind of move through the world a lot more freely. And it also, like exercise makes, lets all the endorphins get moving. And I definitely feel a lot better being active, because before I went vegan, I felt so terrible just physically, and so heavy and weighed down and in pain all the time that I was not active at all. And now I'm like running circles around people. So that's good. And so I started a business about 10 years ago. That's been going a lot. Like it's been picking up a lot of speed since I have more energy and, basically I was able to work quite a bit more. Now I'm working on working more efficiently so I don't have to work like 50 or 60 hours a week. But that was going really well, and enabled me to move to a city that I've been wanting to move to for a long time. And I just got here a couple weeks ago, down on the coast in North Carolina. So I'm really, like, everything has changed. It's been pretty amazing.
So you've lost weight, you're not going into depressive and manic episodes, you've found health, your body's more fit, you've made changes in your life that you wanted to make, your business is growing, things are really on the right track after literally being in the deepest, darkest place that anybody can really be on. And because you found plants, because you found compassion within the vegan movement. And I'm assuming that when you found compassion within the vegan movement, you found compassion a little bit more for yourself too. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's been a bit more of a process, to be honest. And but yes, that one has been a little bit has taken some more time. But yes, I'm coming more and more around to it.
It's all a journey. It's definitely all a journey. And do you have a support system for where you are now, living in a new city and being able to make sure that there's still people watching out for you, that you're not, getting too deep into any type of mood or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm actually at the moment I'm renting out a room with my best friend and her partner, and until I find my own place. And she's known me since we were 11, so she can spot it from a mile away. So that's good. And I'm meeting people all the time. Like, people are so friendly down here. If you just pass by them on the street, they'll strike up a conversation with you. So that's been good. And then I have the gym that I just started training at, like the Jiu-Jitsu Academy. I was in Blacksburg, and now I'm here, and everyone there is really friendly. So I have a lot of good people around me.
It's not an easy thing to share such a deep story, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that, because I know that it's going to definitely, it probably helps you to be able to let it out as well, but it's going to help some of our listeners who might be struggling with similar situations. Just to hear that they're not alone, I think, is going to make a big difference. If you had some advice for one of our listeners that might be going through something similar to what you've gone through, or any other mental health illness or challenge that they might be facing, what would you want to say to them?
So I would say finding a good support, like a good group of people who are truly supportive. Those are really the only people that I would suggest kind of opening up to in that way, because, it's sensitive information. So I would really think about like who in your life has always been there for you, and that is who I would go to. And then really taking care of yourself, and like realizing that you are worth taking care of. Your body needs it, and your body and your mind are connected. So if your body is out of alignment, if it's really struggling in one way or another, then that is going to have an effect on your mental health. So I think that nutrition is often overlooked in the mental health world, and it should not be, because it's one of the most important things. So if you're not already on a plant-based diet or working your way there, I would definitely highly suggest that. And then as far as professional help, if you are having like suicidal thoughts, and especially if you're like planning and really feeling like, okay, this is something that I'm really wanting to do, it's very important to reach out to professionals so that you can get some immediate help. That's essential. And then finding someone that you can work with on a more long-term level. So I found a mentor who, again, she does non-dual therapy, teaches meditation. That's, right up my alley, because I'm totally, I'm a hippie basically. So, so I love that kind of stuff. And it's been very helpful. But finding a therapist that you really like. If the first one doesn't work out, it's okay. Break up with that therapist and go to another one and see how that works. And just don't give up. Keep going, because you will find the right people. And just know that you're worth it, and it is worth all the effort. It can feel really exhausting to even think about the magnitude of, the process, but don't worry about that. Just one day at a time, like one foot in front of the other. Just make a call, or have someone who you trust help you make calls to professionals so you can set these things up, just whatever you're able to do in the moment.
I think that's so important. When I was, pretty at one of my lowest points, it took a long time for me to even find like a helpline that I can call. Like that information wasn't so accessible to me to be able to find it. Going to my GP didn't necessarily help, didn't necessarily give me the tools, but I did go and I did ask. And if you're really in that moment, calling 911 or whatever the emergency services are in your area. But absolutely, it's like dating. You've got to find the right match for the right type of mentor. That mentor might come in the sense of like one of your parents' friends, or a peer, or a colleague, or a professional of any sort, one that's covered by your insurance, one that's not. But at the end of the day, it's your life that's more important than whether it's covered by insurance or not. And you've got to keep looking. I sat in a therapist chair, and she said, "Why is this so important for you? Like, why do you need to act this way?" And I said, "Well, because I don't want to screw up, and I don't want my children to be sitting in this chair in 20 years from now." And I was kind of joking, but not. And her answer to me was, "Well, it's inevitable, so start saving up now." And I get that she was joking, but in that state that I was in, like I laugh at it now. It was not a joke then, and clearly she was not the right. Clearly she was not the right person.
Right.
For me, whether I set off as a joke or not, she needed to come at it with a little bit more compassion, and it did make me give up on that kind of therapy. At that moment, but you've got to just keep on looking, and it's hard. It's hard because brushing your teeth can be hard, and getting out of bed can be hard, and taking off your socks and showering could be hard. You know, all of that's so hard. So thinking about looking for help is hard too. So we really, really appreciate you being so open and honest, and these tips that you've given to people to find help, to reach out, to keep trying, no matter how many people they need to go to get the support that they need, and get somebody to do the work for them sometimes.
Right.
So, Indi, if people wanted to reach out to you, where would you like them to go to connect?
So I would go to, I have an Instagram. It's jujitsu.chickpea. So jujitsu is spelled JIUJITSU and then .chickpea. And you can find me on there. If you want to send a private message, if you want to talk about anything, like, I am open. So yeah.
That's great. So we'll put that into our show notes at planttrainers.com. And if people want to reach out to you, they'll connect there.
I think one more thing that people might want to know is, do you still need to be medicated pharmaceutically, or has this really changed everything, or do you still need to combine the two, which was totally okay?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I have not been on medications in years. I actually do have one that's for emergencies that I have, like, if I need it, but I haven't needed it in quite a while. So I've been really fortunate to not have to go that route for a good while. So.
Congratulations to you for making this change in your life. And thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts to be able to share your message with other people. We know it's going to make a difference.
Thanks, Indi.
It's worth it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.